High up in India's Karakoram Mountains, a shepherd's fire draws in a snarling, furred beast that just tears through flesh and stone, leaving behind nothing but screams and blood. This 2002 Barmanu slaughter, well, it'll make you dread the peaks. Trekkers, this survivor's tale of survival, it'll haunt your every step. It was August 15th, 2002, and I, Sanjay Thakur, a shepherd from a remote village in Ladakh, India, was tending my goats in the Karakoram Mountains, a stark wilderness of jagged peaks and icy winds near the Siachen Glacier. The air was thin at 14,000 feet, the landscape a brutal mix of barren rock and sparse scrub where only the hardiest survive. I'd heard it here for years, used to howling winds and the occasional leopard stalking my flock. But that night, under a crescent moon casting sharp shadows, something far worse found us. My camp was a small fire pit near a boulder-strewn gully. Goats tethered close, my tent just a flimsy shield against the cold. The fire crackled, its warmth alone comfort, but the night felt wrong. Too silent, no crickets, no distant jackal calls, just an oppressive stillness that pressed against my chest. Around 1 a.m., a low, guttural growl rumbled from the darkness, deep enough to shake the loose stones around me. My heart lurched. I grabbed my staff and a flickering torch, scanning the gully. Then I saw it. A massive figure, 8 feet tall, covered in coarse, grayish-brown fur that blended with the rocky slopes. Its arms were long, knuckles grazing the ground, and its face, flat, ape-like, with a heavy brow and eyes glowing red in the firelight, locked onto me with chilling intent. The stench hit next. A rancid mix of wet fur and rotting meat so thick I gagged. It moved upright, deliberate, stepping over boulders with a stride no human could match. My goats bleated in panic, tugging at their ropes as the creature circled closer, its growls growing louder, vibrating through my bones like a warning. I shouted, waving the torch, but it didn't flinch. Instead, it lunged toward the herd, claws slashing through 2 goats in seconds. Their screams cut short as blood sprayed across the rocks, glistening black in the moonlight. Entrails spilled, steaming in the cold, and the beast tore into them, fangs ripping flesh with sickening crunches. I bolted for the tent, grabbing my knife, but it turned, roaring, a deafening primal scream that echoed off the cliffs, silencing the night entirely. It hurled a boulder the size of a car tire, smashing my fire pit into sparks and scattering my gear. I ran, stumbling over scree, the creature's heavy footsteps pounding behind, its stench trailing like a predator's mark. Hours later, I collapsed in a lower village, half frozen, babbling about the Barmanau, the hairy man-beast of local lore. At dawn, villagers and I returned. The camp was devastation goat carcasses, shredded, tent ripped to scraps, and massive tracks, 17 inches long, 5-toed bipedal, circling the site before vanishing into the cliffs. A boulder had fresh claw gouges, deep and jagged no leopard could carve. Blood pooled where my fire once burned, and coarse hairs clung to the wreckage, later tested as unknown primate. BFRO investigators, working with Himalayan cryptozoologists, classified it Class A, noting the Karakoram's sparse human presence and abundant ibex as ideal for such a creature. Elders like Tashi Namgyal spoke of Barmanau as a vengeful spirit angered by our grazing. Story 1. The Ski Resort Massacre in Colorado, inspired by BFRO report number 98,701 Class A. What if a fun ski trip turned into a bloodbath under a blizzard, with a monstrous shadow twisting metal and dragging bodies into the night? This January 2025 horror at Glacier Valley Ski Resort isn't just a sighting. It's a savage attack that'll make you cancel your winter getaway. If you've ever hit the slopes after dark, this true inspired tale from a terrified survivor will have you sweating in the snow. It was January 10th, 2025, and the Glacier Valley Ski Resort in the heart of Colorado's Rocky Mountains was buzzing with the usual winter crowd. Families laughing on the lifts, skiers carving fresh powder under the bright midday sun. But as the sun dipped below the jagged peaks around 4 p.m., the resort's vibe shifted. I'd been working there as a lift operator for 3 seasons, used to the cold winds whipping through the pines and the occasional black bear rummaging for scraps. That night, 3 friends, Megan Ellison, Calvin Reed, and Joel Kamani, decided to film a late-night skiing montage, borrowing a snowcat vehicle to access the upper runs after hours. They were thrill-seekers, always pushing boundaries, and I waved them off from the base lodge, joking about not getting caught by security. Little did I know, that would be the last time I'd see them alive. The storm hit hard around 7 p.m., a blizzard that blanketed the resort in whiteout conditions, visibility dropping to mere feet. I was closing up when the radio crackled with static. Security guard Victor Mendoza reporting unusual noises from the upper slopes, like heavy footsteps crunching snow mixed with low, guttural grunts that echoed unnaturally through the wind. Victor, a burly ex-military guy, wasn't one to spook easily, but his voice trembled as he described seeing a massive shadow, 8 feet tall, covered in shaggy dark fur, lumbering near the tree line with a gait that was too upright, too deliberate for any animal. He'd shown his flashlight catching a glimpse of glowing yellow eyes, and a flat, ape-like face before it vanished into the flurries. Brianna Lell, another employee who'd cited something similar weeks earlier, backed him up over the radio. "It's back, the hairy thing with arms like tree trunks." We dismissed it as wind or a lost hiker at first, but dread settled in my gut like the accumulating snow. By midnight, the snowcat was found overturned on a remote run, its metal frame twisted like a soda can crushed by a hydraulic press, something requiring immense, inhuman strength. Headlights still flickered weakly, illuminating a gruesome scene. Megan's body lay crumpled nearby, her chest cavity crushed inward as if stomped by a boulder, deep lacerations across her torso exposing bone and tissue. Calvin was dragged 20 yards into the woods, his limbs torn at the joints, blood trails leading to snapped branches and massive indentations in the snow. Joel was the worst, half buried under debris, his skull fractured and eyes wide in frozen terror, as if he'd seen death coming. The air reeked of a musky, animalistic stench, like wet fur mixed with coppery blood, and coarse dark hairs clung to the wreckage, too long and thick for a bear. Prints encircled the site, 16 inches long, 5-toed with deep heel impressions, striding bipedally into the forest, unaffected by the blizzard. Rescue teams, including maintenance worker Esther Washington, arrived at dawn, her face paling as she collected samples. Story 2. The Yeti Assault in Lang Valley, Nepal, inspired by BFRO. Report number 98702 Class A. Deep in Nepal's Himalayas, a research team's hut is ripped apart by a furred nightmare, leaving blood and broken bones. Survives only by sheer luck. This 1996 Lang Valley terror isn't folklore. It's a Yeti rampage that'll make you fear the mountains forever. Adventurers, if high altitudes call you, this survivor's harrowing account will ground you for life. September 23, 1996, and our expedition was deep in the remote Lang Valley of Nepal's Himalayas, a jagged paradise of ice-capped peaks and glacial streams where the air thins to a whisper. I was Alice Granger, a seasoned mountaineer and researcher with Dr. Philip Carrington and Sherpa guide Tenzing Furba, studying rare flora at our base camp. A sturdy hut nestled against a sheer cliff, surrounded by prayer flags fluttering in the wind. We'd been there a week, days filled with sample collection amid yaks grazing and the distant rumble of avalanches, nights warmed by a yak dung fire. Locals in nearby villages warned us of the Yeti, tall, furred guardians of the peaks. But we laughed it off as myth, focused on science. That night, under a full moon casting silver on the snow, everything changed. Around 2 a.m., the wind howled fiercer, but it was the explosive crack of our hut door bursting inward that jolted me awake. The wooden frame splintered like matchsticks, hinges flying, and a massive shape filled the doorway, 8 feet tall, covered in thick, matted black fur matted with ice, its eyes glinting red in the lantern light. A wave of stench hit, wet fur, decay, and something primal, like a cave bear crossed with rot. It growled gutturally, a sound vibrating through the stone floor, and lunged. Philip screamed as claws raked his chest, tearing flesh in deep gashes. Tenzing grabbed an ice axe, but the beast swatted him like a doll, bones crunching audibly as he slammed into the wall. Blood sprayed the interior warm and metallic, pooling on the floor as the creature lifted Philip high, hurling him against the cliff face outside with a sickening thud. I froze in my sleeping bag, heart slamming as it turned to Tenzing, ripping into him with fangs bared in a roar that echoed down the valley. The hut shook, equipment scattered, lanterns shattering in sparks. Sheer panic propelled me. I scrambled out a side flap, slipping into the freezing night, the beast's heavy footsteps pursuing, snow crunching under its weight. I ran for hours, lungs burning in the thin air, collapsing 4 kilometers away at a lower camp, exposure numbing my limbs as shock set in. Rescuers found the hut devastated, blood patterns showing victims lifted and thrown, no weapons effective, and massive tracks, 18 inches, 5-toed, leading into the mist. The Yeti, elders like Ming Madorji said, was defending its domain, a legend come alive. BFRO's international arm investigated, classifying it Class A with cast tracks matching Himalayan reports, the area's remoteness and goat herds ideal for such a creature. Traumatized, I never climbed again, secluding myself in a quiet town, haunted by the growls and Philip's final scream. Nepal's peaks hold beauty, but also beasts. That furred horror reminds us. The Himalayas watch back, and they're not welcoming intruders. If you're trekking high, heed the warnings, because one night, the door might not hold. Welcome to Bigfoot Uncovered, where we bring you the raw, unfiltered terror of cryptid encounters from every corner of the globe. Today, we're unleashing 8 extended first-person Bigfoot and Yeti-like stories inspired by real sightings and folklore, spanning from snowy ski resorts to remote jungles. These immersive tales, drawn from BFRO-style reports and global legends, are packed with chills. Whether it's a Sasquatch attack in Colorado or a Yeti horror in Nepal, these accounts will make you question what's lurking beyond the trees. Turn down the lights, lock your doors, and let's dive into the first one, because in the wild, you're never truly alone. Story 3, the Zili Muzh Cabin Carnage in Slovakia, inspired by BFRO report number 98703 Class A. In Slovakia's High Tatras, a hunter's cabin is demolished from within, blood on the ceiling and a body eviscerated. The other vanished without a trace. This 1983 encounter with the Zili Muzh will turn snowy forests into your worst nightmare. If folklore chills you, this search team's discovery will have you avoiding cabins altogether. December 12, 1983, and the High Tatras Mountains in Slovakia were a winter wonderland of deep snow and pine-scented air, but for hunters Pavle Cherny and Thomas Gregor, it became a tomb. I was part of the search team, Ivana Kolarova, a local guide familiar with these rugged slopes where bears hibernate and wolves howl. Pavle and Thomas had set up in a remote cabin, a wooden shelter stocked for a week-long hunt, when they went silent. Days later, we found it, the door torn off its hinges. Flung 10 meters away, the interior wrecked as if a tornado hit. Furniture splintered, walls gouged with claw marks, deep as knives. Blood smeared the ceiling, flung upward through a shattered skylight, and Thomas's body lay in the center, torso ripped open, organs missing, his face frozen in agony. Pavle. Gone, no trace but a bent rifle barrel nearby, twisted by force needing tons of pressure. No human or bear could do that. The air stank of pungent musk like spoiled meat and sweat, and tracks circled the site, 40 centimeters long, bipedal with 5 toes, vanishing into the drifts. Locals revived tales of the Zili Muzh, a massive hair-covered humanoid from folklore, protector of the woods. Our team froze in horror, no bear prints, no struggle signs outside. It came from within, perhaps lured by their fire. BFRO investigators later confirmed Class A, noting the Tatra's dense forests and deer populations as perfect habitat with similar evisceration reports. The area was sealed, but the image of that bloodied ceiling haunts me. I guide no more at night. Slovakia's mountains hide horrors. If you hunt there, arm heavy, the Zili Muzh might knock first. Story 4. The Metson Pato Mimic in Verrakuuso National Park, Finland, inspired by BFRO report number 98704, Class B, camping in Finland's forests. when your brother's voice calls from the dark, but it's a giant mimic shredding your sight and kidnapping him. This 2007 Varacuso nightmare with the Metzan Peto will make solitude your enemy. Campers, beware, this brother's descent into madness will echo in your ears. August 17, 2007 in Varacuso National Park, Finland, my brother Mikko and I, Arto Saarinen, pitched our tent right there among birch groves and blueberry patches, with the summer air just alive with birdsong. We were avid campers, but that night Mikko vanished after answering what sounded like my own voice calling from the woods. I found the campsite completely shredded. Tent ripped across 200 meters, gear impaled on trees 4 meters high. There was no blood, but Mikko was gone, and I just babbled about legs like telephone poles and a mimicking growl. The Metzan Peto folklore said, a forest giant kidnapping with voices. I never recovered, institutionalized, haunted by the fake call. BFRO Class B for destruction. Area's remoteness ideal. Finland's woods whisper lies. Don't answer. The Yowie, well, it hunts intruders. Now, Story 7 takes us to the Almaty assault in the Caucasus Mountains of Russia, again inspired by a BFRO report. In Russia's Caucasus, a cave explorer's light suddenly fails as a hairy giant just crushes his gear and lets out a roar in the dark. This 2015 Almaty cave horror, it'll give you a real dose of claustrophobia. Spelunkers, this survivor's crawl out will just about trap your breath. Back in 2015, up in the remote Caucasus Mountains of Russia, I found myself exploring a cave. Suddenly my light flickered out and I was met with a bone-chilling roar. There it stood, a 9-foot Almaty with pale fur, crushing my pack beneath its massive weight. I clawed my way past it, leaving tracks in the mud as I scrambled to escape. I barely made it out of there alive. This encounter was classified as a BFRO Class A sighting. The remoteness of those mountains sure knows how to hide such creatures. Those caves, they breathe life and death. The Yowie, well, it hunts intruders. Now, Story 7 takes us to the Almaty assault in the Caucasus Mountains of Russia, again inspired by a BFRO report. In Russia's Caucasus, a cave explorer's light suddenly fails as a hairy giant just crushes his gear and lets out a roar in the dark. This 2015 Almaty cave horror, it'll give you a real dose of claustrophobia. Spelunkers, this survivor's crawl out will just about trap your breath. Back in 2015, up in the remote Caucasus Mountains of Russia, I found myself exploring a cave. Suddenly my light flickered out and I was met with a bone-chilling roar. There it stood, a 9-foot Almaty with pale fur, crushing my pack beneath its massive weight. I clawed my way past it, leaving tracks in the mud as I scrambled to escape. I barely made it out of there alive. This encounter was classified as a BFRO Class A sighting. The remoteness of those mountains sure knows how to hide such creatures. Those caves, they breathe life and death. Story 5, the Tokoloshe Terror in Kamabkral National Park, South Africa, inspired by BFRO report number 98705, Class A. In South Africa's Bushveld, a safari turns deadly as a dwarfed beast with fiery eyes disembowels a ranger, leaving footprints that just plain defy logic. This 1972 Kamabkral attack by the Tokoloshe will make safaris your phobia. Wildlife lovers, this ranger's last stand will scar you. June 17, 1972, Kamabkral National Park, South Africa. Ranger Johan van der Merwe led a tour when a low, cackling growl erupted. A 5-foot creature, gray-furred with red eyes, charged, claws eviscerating him in seconds, dragging the body into thorns. Tracks small but bipedal, 12 inches. Folklore Tokoloshe, evil spirit. Witnesses fled in terror. BFRO Class A. Park's acacias hiding such. I survived, but the cackle haunts. Africa's wild calls death. So, Story 6 is all about the Yowie ambush in the Blue Mountains of Australia, inspired by a real BFRO report. Imagine you're hiking through Australia's Blue Mountains when all of a sudden, a howling brute starts hurling boulders and stalking your trail, its eyes burning right through the eucalyptus. Story 5, the Tokoloshe Terror in Kamab Kral National Park, South Africa, inspired by BFRO report number 98705, Class A. In South Africa's Bushveld, a safari turns deadly as a dwarfed beast with fiery eyes disembowels a ranger, leaving footprints that just plain defy logic. This 1972 Kamab Kral attack by the Tokoloshe will make safaris your phobia. Wildlife lovers, this ranger's last stand will scar you. June 17, 1972, Kamab Kral National Park, South Africa. Ranger Johan van der Merwe led a tour when a low, cackling growl erupted. A 5-foot creature, gray-furred with red eyes, charged, claws eviscerating him in seconds, dragging the body into thorns. Tracks small but bipedal, 12 inches. Folklore Tokoloshe, evil spirit. Witnesses fled in terror. BFRO Class A. Park's acacias hiding such. I survived, but the cackle haunts. Africa's wild calls death. So, Story 6 is all about the Yowie ambush in the Blue Mountains of Australia, inspired by a real BFRO report. Imagine you're hiking through Australia's Blue Mountains when all of a sudden, a howling brute starts hurling boulders and stalking your trail, its eyes burning right through the eucalyptus. These global cryptid tales prove Bigfoot's kin roam worldwide. If they gave you goosebumps, like comment your scariest encounter, and subscribe to Curious Conundrums for more uncovered horrors. Hit the bell, stay safe, and watch the wild. These global cryptid tales prove Bigfoot's kin roam worldwide. If they gave you goosebumps, like comment your scariest encounter, and subscribe to Curious Conundrums for more uncovered horrors. Hit the bell, stay safe, and watch the wild. This 1998 Yowie encounter? Well, it'll turn Outback Adventures downright toxic. Bushwalkers, this hiker's evasion tale is one that's sure to keep you on the paths. Back in 1998, out in the Blue Mountains of Australia, I was trekking along when, out of nowhere, rocks started pelting down from above. A 7-foot Yowie, covered in reddish fur, just howling like mad. It was paralleling me, boulders flying, and the stench was just overwhelming. The tracks it left behind were 15 inches long. I hightailed it back to my car. That was a BFRO Class B encounter. And let me tell you, those caves in the area are just perfect for something like that to hide. I'll never hike alone again.